The time has come at last to throw away this mask. Now everyone can listen to Vaguely Scientific. I've got a secret. I've been hiding under my skin. I am Derek. And his heart is human, his blood is boiling, his brain IBM. He's Jim, the science friend. Hi, Jim.
Man, remember when you could, buy IBM computers?
I remember that people could buy IBM computers. I never could.
Right, yeah, that's what I mean. The royal you.
The royal you. And so if you see our guest this week acting strangely, don't be surprised. Please welcome back Brian.
Hello. If I'm acting strangely, it's because I have recently BM'd.
I get it. That's funny. So this is a show where listeners send in questions to hear our vaguely scientific answers, and who knows, we might even get some of those answers right. But first, it's time for Jim's fun science fact of the day. Jim?
All right. Explosive nucleosynthesis, which is a great expression. I love these two words together. It is the process by which stars create elements that are heavier than iron, and this happens when they go supernova. The supernova shockwave slams into the outer layers of the star, blasting it apart and smashing atoms together so violently that they fuse together into heavier elements past iron.
Oh.
And then do they fly away from the star or do they stay?
Yeah, they just go out and they seed the universe with heavy elements.
What elements are heavier? Is that like a lot of elements or not? I don't know how heavy iron is. I don't have a frame of reference.
Iron is not that high up the periodic table. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but I can tell you that a lot of things like silver and gold and platinum, those are all things that are heavier than iron. Mercury. Boy, I'm blanking on some of the other ones. I'd have to have a periodic table in front of me, but a lot of really important stuff is heavier than iron.
Okay.
Let me see what number iron is real quick.
I know it's Fe. I don't know what number it is.
Let's see. Nickel. Oh, iron is, boy, I can't see. It's too tiny. Iron is number 26. 26 out of 92.
Oh.
So 27 and on are all heavier?
Yeah, so nickel, copper, zinc, xenon, not the most important one, but I like xenon. Uranium, tungsten.
Huh. Oh, you gotta have tungsten.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can thank stars for gold, I guess.
I mean, you could thank stars for all of them that are heavier than hydrogen and helium, really, to be fair.
Yeah, but then we'll be here all day.
Yeah. Did they ever make you know how Animaniacs did a state capital song and they did a country song? Did they ever do a periodic table song? Or maybe They Might Be Giants did? I don't know.
Tom Lehrer did.
Oh, perfect.
To the tune of Modern Major General.
That's right. I have heard that song a lot of times, actually.
Yeah.
That's great. I love that.
Do you think when old-timey people were saying oh, thank my stars, they were thinking about supernovas specifically, probably?
I think they were thinking about astrology.
I was going to say, I think that's where the expression comes from, but yeah, Jim is right.
I want to believe.
I think with the fun science fact out of the way, we should probably tackle our first question for this week.
Do it.
Which comes to us from Anne. Would an elevator lift a ghost, or would it have to fly up under its own power?
Ooh.
There's a lot of directions to go with this. And the first one that I have to get out of the way, because I'm always that guy, is that I don't know that ghosts are beholden to the laws of physics. I guess I can't definitively say this, but I'm going to make a broad sweeping statement that ghosts aren't real.
On your science show.
I think for the sake of the question, we have to assume they are, though.
Right.
Otherwise, the question is over.
Well, I guess I'll start with probably my favorite entry in maybe my favorite video game series. In Final Fantasy VI, you
Oh.
board a ghost train.
Oh yeah.
Which I think the train itself might be a ghost. You do wind up suplexing it before it's over.
That's true.
And there are various ghosts riding on the train. And when the train comes to a stop, they seem to just stop with it, even though they're in the middle of a fight with you.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Okay, yeah, so they do share the momentum of the ghost train.
Yeah.
Huh.
That is my memory of it anyway. It's been a while since I played it.
Okay.
I haven't played Final Fantasy VI, but I have been playing very recently a game called Trials of Mana. Which was originally it was a Super Nintendo game. I've been playing the remake that came out on the Switch, but I was on a ghost ship, and after I sort of beat the ghost boss, the entire ship disappeared. So the ship, by all evidence, appears to have also been a ghost. So I'm right there with you. You know.
Well, so we keep getting. I feel like the data is skewed because we keep having vehicles that are ghost vehicles.
Yeah. I think the real question is, can a human ride a ghost elevator?
I don't think there is a debate on that one. I think ghost elevators carry ghosts, end of argument.
Yeah. What is the Tower of Terror? Because there's ghosts on that, right?
Oh, that's true.
Is it corporeal? I guess I ride on it, so presumably it is real, right?
I think that's a human elevator.
It's a human elevator that is haunted.
Yeah.
Right?
In the Tower of Terror case, I think what you're looking at here is the ghosts are riding up, the ghosts are hovering up to continue to harass you. If they did not want to harass you, they would be left behind by the elevator.
Ah, okay.
So you're purporting that ghosts obey the physics of ghost vehicles, but not of human or corporeal vehicles.
Right.
Well, ghosts can walk through walls, right? So I think they don't have to follow the physics of...
yeah, for sure. If they don't want to obey physics, they don't need to. I agree with that.
Right.
Well, there was that documentary called Ghost with Whoopi Goldberg and whoever the actual...
Patrick Swayze.
Patrick Swayze, thank you. I was like, I wanted to say Patrick Swayze, but I was like, there's no way that's correct.
This is the sexual pottery movie?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay.
And that was its working title, as I understand.
Yeah.
But in Ghost, Patrick Swayze is able to concentrate really, really hard and very briefly become corporeal. And so theoretically, assuming that we're working under the premise of Ghost with Patrick Swayze and Whoopi Goldberg, a ghost could actually do that in an elevator, just focus really hard and become corporeal long enough to get off of the third floor.
Yeah. I want to tangent off of that real quick because this is just a rant that I want to give
about how bad Ghost is.
Here's Derek's Ghost rant, his classic rant. We can't get him to stop giving this.
I do this all the time. Well, here's the thing. I just want to say this. I want to spread the word because the first time I ever saw the movie Ghost was a year ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because I never watched it before that because the most famous thing about it is the pottery scene. And as a kid, I was like, oh, that's a sappy romance movie. I don't want to watch that. And I watched it a year ago and I was like, this movie is not marketed well to the demographic that would appreciate, because it's like a superhero movie.
Yeah,
So you were watching where the heck is my pottery?
Right? I was so
very
disappointed.
bored of this superhero movie.
Yeah.
But no, so I liked it a lot and did not expect to.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I brought it up not having really looked into it because I saw it how old am I? I was probably 25 years ago I saw it. It was when I was a young teenager, I think. And I remember liking it. It was a fine movie. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing most people remember is the whole pottery shebang. But I remember there was the whole scene in the middle where the character that ostensibly becomes the bad guy towards the end teaches him how to focus and basically do poltergeist stuff. And so, ghosts can learn how to touch things that are material, apparently.
I guess so.
if you watch the documentary Ghost by Patrick Swayze.
Mm-hmm.
By Patrick Swayze.
I have never seen it, and I literally did only know it as the Pottery movie, so maybe I should watch it.
I think you would like it, honestly.
It's not bad.
So back to the topic at hand, though. I wanted to bring up, I have often actually had this thought not with ghosts, but with other fictional characters that have like the superpower to phase through physical objects and stuff.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because I'm thinking, so like Shadowcat from the X-Men or Vision or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll look at them like phasing through like a table, but they're still walking on the ground. And well, easily I could think maybe they can just make portions of their body intangible, but then I've also seen them like climbing up out of the floor, or like their whole body going through a wall, and I'm like, where is the line? I don't know. So I've always gotten tripped up with this idea, because I've also heard kind of the joke answer to this type of topic that if ghosts are not beholden to the laws of physics, and they're not affected by other matter, then they're not affected by gravity. So all of the ghosts are just lost in space as the Earth has moved, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have thought about that. That's also often what trips me up about time travel stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But yeah, so therefore I do think that they must be affected by momentum or something.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that.
Well, there's like Casper the Friendly Ghost has the ability to phase through the ground even, and has done so on multiple occasions, but does appear to be affected by gravity if he's not paying attention, or if he somehow loses some aspect of his powers. Then he has been known to fall to the ground. And one of the ones I thought, I don't know how. I'm getting really into the weeds about a Casper comic that no one else in the world has probably read in their lives. I read a comic of Casper where he ended up on the moon, and he was stuck there because I think he either fell asleep inside of the rocket or something like that. I don't know. He ended up on the moon, and the astronauts left him behind somehow. They didn't know he was there, and he couldn't fly home. For reasons I can't remember exactly why, if they gave a reason why he didn't have enough power to fly home on his own. So for whatever reason, the bottom of the lunar module was alive and like gave him a push, and he was able to get all the way home. But Casper the Friendly Ghost appears to have been affected by gravity in some capacity. So that's where I was going with that.
Well, but also has the ability to fly.
Yeah.
So the elevator question is like they are capable of pushing themselves above. I think this is another tangent, but I think it's interesting since you brought up Casper, that I think it was Joe Oriolo, the creator of Casper, that said this, but there has always been people looking into the morbid premise of Casper the Friendly Ghost being ostensibly a child. And the creator of Casper the Friendly Ghost specifically said, in the world of Casper the Friendly Ghost, ghosts are not the spirits of people.
Oh, okay.
They're just their own sort of entity, and they just like to hang out in cemeteries.
I mean, he simply used the incorrect word, right? Like he's Casper this friendly spirit, then surely. Right?
Okay, yeah.
Maybe there's like a rule that us mortals don't know about, but the ghosts all know, or I guess maybe not know, but just experience. Maybe there's like an infallibility to the ground itself. While you might be able to phase through like a floor, or like you maybe be able to phase through the ground if you concentrate on it, maybe ghosts just default to ground and they can't pass through it because there's like something special about the ground that maybe we aren't aware of because we are held up by any number of normal matter pieces.
Sure.
So you're saying like Mother Gaia rejects them?
Yes. Yes. I like
the
that.
Only logical explanation.
I like that. Yeah, that works.
I have a kind of similar idea that is, so this is going back to, I don't know, it was either our first or our second Halloween episode.
Okay. Was it the one with the bricks?
Yeah.
Okay.
For the reference of in the show notes, go listen to our back catalog.
Yeah.
But we had kind of come up with the idea that ghosts are tethered to either a location or an object. And I was thinking maybe in addition to that, all ghosts are also tethered to just the center of the earth. So they're just dragged along with it in a not completely different from gravity sort of way.
Yeah.
Like spooky gravity.
Yeah.
Spooky gravity.
Dark matter.
That's
dark matter is a weird one because dark matter is affected by gravity and appears to have mass too.
And to my dumb brain is essentially magic.
Yeah.
I think gravity in general is magic. So, you know.
I am now in favor of the cause of switching the term dark matter to spooky gravity.
Yeah.
I don't think science would be all that upset by that, to be honest with you.
Call it spooky gravity.
Yeah. Actually, it's kind of interesting that we're even on this tangent because there is one other thing that is affected by gravity but does not have mass. And we talked about this recently, that photons, light, doesn't have mass. And it's not directly affected by gravity, but because gravity warps space, it will bend light because basically it's like the light passes through this bent space and changes direction. So maybe ghosts are affected like that too somehow.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think this is enough to fill a whole episode, but at one point we had the question, are ghosts actually fourth dimensional beings? And I don't think we'll ever do that because, like I said, I don't think that question alone is enough to be a whole discussion, but it is worth bringing up because there are, I don't know, accounts of people watching like ghostly images that will like repeat the same process over and over again. And it's like the way that 3 dimensions would be viewed in 2 dimensions, you'd just see like a slice of the 3-dimensional object. So maybe you're just seeing a sliver of time in the 4th dimension. And that's what ghosts are.
Yeah. If we ever do that, I think there are a couple really interesting avenues we could pursue. But that thing specifically that you said is something that I wrote down where a lot of ghost sightings appear to be this entity basically on loop. And so if that's the case, assuming that in this loop they rode an elevator, they could probably ride that elevator. It might be a little bit weird if the elevator's not there when they start going up.
They're just like out of sync with the elevator. Ooh,
like you get on at floor 2 and a ghost is riding the elevator from floor 1 to 3 while you're on it. That's interesting.
Yeah. Alternatively, it'd be really funny if you were like going down and the ghost was going up and you just like passed each other.
I could see like scenes from like a Japanese horror movie that I'm picturing happening now.
Yeah, and there's like a flashback to the ghost's time and it sees you as a ghost.
Oh. Yeah.
I like that a lot, actually.
Hey, we've conjoined our problems with ghosts and time travel all in one little thing here.
True. This is not actually related at all. I was thinking about a Japanese movie that I saw. It doesn't have to do with the second question at all. Although, never mind. I'll talk about it later.
I'm on an emotional roller coaster right now.
Yeah, no. I'll bring it up, but it's not really about ghosts or anything. But I was thinking about how there is this movie called Your Name, and it is a Japanese anime movie from, I want to say 2016-ish. And I saw it on like a couple lists of like some of the best movies of all time. And I saw it once. It's very, very good. But the idea is about switching bodies, basically. But when you said like, from your perspective, you're the ghost. And from your perspective, you're the other person's the ghost. And I was like, oh, that's like that kind of where you're switching bodies. This has nothing to do with the question. But I am going to bring that movie up again in the second question.
Oh, okay. I wonder how that could possibly relate.
But another thing I did want to bring up, though, is just the idea that, like, ghosts, if ghosts are, like, aware and they are their own individuals and they are, like, sentient or whatever, they might just choose to do things that humans do, like a living human, because it's more comfortable for them. They might not even be aware they're doing it. Maybe they're just subconsciously following the laws of gravity and things like that.
Ooh, it's like breathing. So being affected by gravity becomes just this passive thing.
Yeah. Oh, what was I? I feel like I saw something recently or read something, some story or movie or something where the person somehow became superhuman and they were realizing they no longer had to breathe and it was weirding them out, and they were doing it anyway because it did not feel good to them to not breathe, even though they didn't need to anymore. Can't remember what that was.
Yeah.
I think that was Planet Earth, I assume. Right?
What, the documentary with David Attenborough?
Yes.
David Attenborough was like, I don't have to breathe anymore, but it's very strange not to, so I'm going to keep doing it.
Yes.
What a weird sentence that I've uttered that is now in this show. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
No, that was it.
That was it? Okay.
Oh, I forgot about the joke I wrote down. This is a joke I'm sure you've all heard, but I did write it in my show notes, and it is the first thing I wrote because it's very good. Why did the ghost ride the elevator?
I don't know, Jim. Why?
To lift its spirits. And on that bombshell.
Can we next time could we also have him like be carrying a bottle of liquor or something to like triple entendre?
Doing. And also a cartoon horse from the early 2000s. Spirit.
Oh yeah, okay. I had to think about that one a minute.
Yeah.
What booze would ghosts like? Oh, booze. I didn't mean to do that one.
This is going off the rails.
Yeah.
Like a ghost train.
What's our second question?
Well, before we get to our second question.
Oh, right. I'm jumping the gun here because I want to get away from this thing that's become.
We'll get away from it. Don't worry.
Good.
Well, I have an easy way to get away from this, Jim. How about we go on to our middle segment, because now it's time for...
Today in Science History.
History.
In 1973, Ohio made history by installing the first metric road signs in the U.S. along Interstate 71. These signs displayed distances in both miles and kilometers, showing the stretch between Columbus and Cincinnati as well as Columbus and Cleveland. The idea of adopting a decimal-based measurement system similar to the metric system had been around since 1790 when Thomas Jefferson first proposed it. Fast forward to 1968, Congress commissioned a study on the topic which recommended transitioning to the metric system within a decade. This momentum led to the National Metric Conference in 1973, which inspired Ohio to test metric highway signs. However, the Metric Conversion Act of 1975, which aimed to encourage voluntary adoption of the system, didn't amount to much because it was voluntary and most people didn't want to do it. The signs between Columbus and Cleveland were removed during a road widening project in the 90s.
That's a shame.
Yeah, there you go.
A brief glimpse into an alternate world.
It's one of those things that I understand why there is so much pushback against it, because we all know the weird number system that we have.
Yeah.
That 5,280 feet is a mile. Like, we all know that. But the thing is learning metric is so easy, though, because it's all just base 10. So.
Yeah, and everyone else do be using it.
Yeah.
So.
You think there's like one other country, I think, that uses imperial, and
I want to say it's like a very small country. I'm going to look it up because I want to say it's in Africa.
And England does still use weird stuff. They still talk about stones and things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, here we are. The United States, Liberia, and Myanmar.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
here's the thing. For some things, I actually like imperial better. I stand by the fact that I think Fahrenheit is a better temperature scale because 0 and 100 are things that are relatable to humans. I think that for weather specifically, that Fahrenheit is good because, 0 Celsius is freezing point of water, but 100 Celsius, you've been long dead. Like no one's getting to 100 Celsius.
no one's getting there.
Your stove will get you there, but you are not going to go along for the ride. But for measurements like miles and kilometers and stuff, I think kilometers is better because it's just so easy to convert. So we should do it.
Yeah, I have heard
no time like the present.
The only defense of our length measurements that I've heard is that it is in many ways easier to take quarters.
Okay. Interesting.
Which is an interesting thing, like for carpenters or someone like that. It can be helpful in that way.
Right.
But I don't think it's worth it still.
Mm-hmm.
But there is like one silver lining to it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things where, like with the UK, like I feel like you can do both, and there could be a good mix of units based on what you're doing at the time. So, like driving, where you're looking at miles versus kilometers, I think kilometers would be better. But for things like carpentry, then it might be advantageous to have access to both. Really,
I still feel like 25 is a quarter of 100. That's still pretty easy.
True. I was going to say I do a lot of stuff with millimeters, so I don't notice it too much because millimeters are small enough that it barely matters anymore.
Yeah, that's and you're doing like science stuff, so that's it would if it's going to matter somewhere, it would be in science more than
true.
in the wood shop.
On the whole, science uses metric like across the board, so
yeah. Well, there's proof that we tried.
Yeah, we'll get there someday. Eventually, we're going to be like, you know what? Multiplying by 10 is easy.
Well, in the meantime, I think we should probably talk about our second question, which actually comes to us from Brian. Hey, Brian, that's you.
It's me.
It's you.
You came along with your own question for free.
I demanded to be let on the show so I could get this answered.
That's true. I feel much safer now that you're not threatening me. So, question 2 this week is, what movie's plot would be most affected by the introduction of cell phones?
I want to say something that isn't about the question itself. So, I did what I think many of us do to get us underway, to figuring out what we want to talk about, and that is to do an internet search for basically the wording of the question. And I found many great articles about this. And all of the articles, or I should say, like all the like the forum posts and like the Quora question answers and like Reddit, they ask the question, and immediately and invariably someone says every episode of Seinfeld. And while that is genuinely a true statement that pretty much any given episode of Seinfeld could be solved by a cell phone, Seinfeld's not a movie, so
does not fit. I also think we have to just quickly get out of the way any movie set pre-electricity. You kind of just have to assume that people won't be really freaked out by the cell phone, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that leads into one of the follow-up questions.
Are you telling me No Country for Old Men could not be made better with cell phones?
Name a movie that wouldn't be made better with Godzilla in it. That's always comes up. So my question, because the first thing I thought was things like movies that take place a long time ago, like something that takes place in the Dark Ages or medieval times or something. And because I'm a contrarian and because I like to deconstruct the question, and we absolutely don't have to stay on this if nobody else wants to, but I was immediately like, what if they had cell phones, but could they charge the cell phones? Are there cell phone towers? Is the infrastructure there? Yeah. And then, so now I'm like, how world breaking is this question? And the answer is however much world breaking we want it to be.
Right.
But it is, I mean, I think probably we've all thought about that. I don't know about you guys. I have thought about, like, if I knew I was about to get like thrown 1,000 years into the past, what would I bring with me to help me?
Right.
And it is like, cell phone is only going to help you the first 36 hours, or however long your phone lasts.
Yeah. Unless, I was going to say, unless you have a crummy battery like me, and then it only helps you about the first 12 hours.
Yeah.
Also, you can't go on Wikipedia anyway, so.
And then, you're limited by anything you can do, just not internet on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really helps you out on a boring wagon ride or something.
Yeah, you can play solitaire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting because one of the things that I did was I looked at the I think this came out about 20 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that at this point, but AFI did 100 years, 100 movies, and it was like the 100 best movies of all time at that time. And I went down that list, and one of the things that I noticed immediately was that I tend to watch movies where they would have had cell phones or something equivalent anyway. So mostly like sci-fi and stuff like that. So like Star Wars, I was like, well, Star Wars, they can communicate over vast distances anyway. So,
Sure.
But the other thing that I noticed was that a lot of the really great movies of all time, they are sort of timeless enough that it really doesn't matter that they don't have cell phones. Like cell phones, I feel like in the context of this question, the cell phone would be there to alleviate misunderstanding or convey information faster or before somebody like has a problem. And a lot of the like really great movies of all time, that doesn't really matter. Like there are instances where you could probably point to something and be like, oh yeah, this would have been resolved a little faster if they could have chatted about it over the phone. But it's like, yeah, but maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, it depends on the kind of movie, but certainly I feel like maybe this is more of a thing like in gaming than it is in movies, but it feels like in media it's not uncommon to depict like going on a quest to deliver information, you know? And cell phone would just totally invalidate that sort of story, you know?
Journey
like,
to the West.
In real life, the guy who died after running the first marathon would have probably stayed alive. So that changes his plot, I guess.
Yeah.
Actually, those two things do kind of bring up a really good point where, well, I don't know about the first marathon with the Greek situation, but Journey to the West, the entire point of that was the journey. It had nothing to do, like, they could have given the scrolls or like sent them however, but like, the journey was what allowed the characters to grow and become what they were in the end.
So on that, something that is kind of against that, but in a similar like Journey to the West, take Journey to the West instead, make it the Odyssey. And I think that doesn't hold up because the Odyssey is not about Odysseus growing. The Odyssey is just a lot of Odysseus being delayed.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really transform as a character very much.
He just gets beaten up.
And if he could have called Penelope and been like, hey, I am alive and I'm on my way.
Yeah.
The whole thing with the suitors is just no longer an issue.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about epic poems, which are also not movies, but
they've
made movies of them.
Yeah. There was an episode of Wishbone about it. It's fine.
Yeah. Ray Fiennes just did an Odyssey adaptation that no one heard of last year. So,
oh, really? I have to watch it.
I think it's called like The Way Back or something like that.
Okay. I want to go back to just briefly one thing that Jim said, that like classic movies, it doesn't matter that they don't have cell phones. Like it wouldn't affect the story because they're just well written or whatever.
Fair. Yeah.
But for the most part, when you're talking about like classic movies, they still are written at a time when there aren't cell phones. But I wanted to call attention to The Batman, which I don't know what everybody's opinion of is, but I really liked that movie.
Is that
this is the new one?
The Robert Pattinson one.
Right. I've heard good things about it. I have not seen it.
I enjoyed it.
I thought it was really good, and something that really like my immediate thought about that movie was I couldn't tell when it took place, which was, I thought, a good thing because like it ostensibly took place modern day. And I think they did have cell phones and like digital technology and stuff, but the way that it was made, it felt like I was watching kind of a timeless period piece.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of emphasizes what I took to be your point about classic movies, Jim.
I feel like that is also a common feature of the good Batman stuff.
True.
Because his enemies are so inherently 1920s gangster sort of guys.
Yeah. So yeah, if they can make it kind of harken back to noir is kind of where it wants to sit.
And it's also one of those things where I think that the reason the question was asked in the first place is that, well, I guess you're the question asker, right? Never mind. I was like, oh, this is somebody I don't know, but you just came along with this question. But I feel like the idea of this trope of like, oh, if you give them a cell phone, does it, change the plot significantly?
Mhm.
And I think it is sort of one of those like timeless things that people will occasionally lean on as like an easy way to get some kind of drama going where
Yeah.
there's miscommunication or like a missed communication. And in a lot of movies that are really well put together and a lot of stories that are really well put together, that's not something that necessarily is going to be leaned on as a huge part of the plot. There are other conflicts in play that are going to be taking up more of that stage space. Not to say that they don't happen, but
Sure. Well, that makes me think, why medical drama is an entire genre is because it is really easy to write a conversation that could just resolve an issue if two people would sit there and talk. But these characters are always interrupted by getting paged or some emergency. And it's really easy to find endings of scenes without having to just cut away and be like, how come they didn't finish talking?
Yeah.
That makes sense. And it also has a really great excuse for bringing in guest stars and stuff like that.
Yeah,
True.
absolutely. The other thing I kind of wanted to go back to, because when I looked up this question on the internet, I found I can't remember the names, but I found a couple people commenting that the invention of cell phones or the prevalence of cell phone technology has made it difficult to write. And this is going back to when, Jim, you were talking about Seinfeld, so it's still not movies, but they say it's making it more difficult to write things like sitcoms and stuff because it's harder to, I don't know, come up with the conflict that can't just be solved with a simple text message. And my response to that is, one, the more convoluted response is just make things take place in the past.
Oh, yeah.
But then beyond that, and a more simple answer is just get better at writing.
And this is especially prevalent, I think, probably more in the horror genre. But just make them have no bars.
Yeah.
Like if you really wanted to, the cell phones don't help at all.
One of the things that came up on my list when I was putting this together was Scream. The original Wes Craven Scream, because that whole movie is about phones, like about being able to find a phone and connecting. And they've a couple years ago made like a requel of Scream with Jenna Ortega, and they have cell phones because it's like takes place in 2021 or something. And it was interesting to me to see how they still were really heavily focused on how communication affects our society, but the killer was still able to like you do tricks with the phone. Like he was able to clone people's cell phones and stuff like that. And so I don't think that it broke the story.
Yeah. Well, that, I was thinking about other sitcoms. I know that, again, we're getting away from movies and into sitcoms, but like there are a lot of sitcoms that don't really fall into that trap, especially ones that sort of take place in a very small space. And the ones specifically I was thinking of are like Golden Girls and Cheers, where 90 to 95% of any given episode is going to be in like one room, basically. And I think that's kind of an interesting sort of counterpoint to some of that, where it's like, well, you can write a sitcom where that won't matter. Like the miscommunications are not from missed communications. They're because people are genuinely upset at each other.
Yeah. I'm calling out amateur playwrights, I guess. The amount of short plays that I have read in the past few years that the play is essentially just one person on stage listening to a bunch of voice messages is so common. And like, people, that's not a play. Don't do that.
Fair.
You don't need that to be on stage.
I did want to jump back into a couple movies that I thought were kind of interesting, because specifically I was trying to think of some James Bond movies that were that things might have gone more smoothly if they had access to a cell phone. And I think that the movie is fine how it is, except for some very problematic things in it, but it was 1964, whatever. Anyway, I'm thinking about Goldfinger. There is a protracted scene, or I should say several scenes really, where James Bond is stuck at Auric Goldfinger's Kentucky farm. And he has been tracked there because he had a homing device in his shoe. But the way that Goldfinger has orchestrated everything, it sort of makes it look like he's a guest and not a prisoner. So if he had a cell phone, he could have called and been like, "Hey, I'm being held here against my will. Help."
What is the name of Goldfinger? What you just said?
Auric Goldfinger.
Auric Goldfinger. So when you said that, I immediately thought Auric Goldfinger's old Kentucky farm.
I mean, yeah, that's about right.
I've never seen Goldfinger, and that just, I was like, that I was not expecting to hear that string of words together.
A couple of other ones that I think a cell phone might have come in handy. Of all things, Moonraker. And the reason for that is Moonraker is a really fun movie to watch. I cannot claim that it is well written. I love watching Moonraker. Moonraker is great because they go to space. But there are a lot of times...
That's your criteria, Jim.
I mean, kind of. It's also just really funny and fun. But there are several times throughout the movie where Bond has found like a hidden laboratory or a secret base or what have you. And he basically goes off to try to like round up the authorities. And by the time they get back, it's been completely cleared out. And it's like, if he had a cell phone on him, he could have called like right there and right then and had agents flooding the area. And so yeah, Moonraker might have worked. And I mean, to be fair, that is something that does show up here and there in James Bond. But I mean, I can forgive it because they are very clearly set in the 60s and 70s and the 80s. So they didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
Actually, that's one of the things I'm kind of hoping when they do reboot James Bond is they make it a period piece. Try not to, because I think that James Bond suffers from being set in the present, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because there are just so many spy movies it has to compete with, whereas if it's set itself in the 60s or whatever.
Yeah, what differentiates it from every other modern action movie that, well, it's James Bond and he's from the 60s.
Yeah.
And it'll make it more like Austin Powers. So that's always cool.
That's everything I know about James Bond is Austin Powers.
It's so funny because like if you know James Bond and then watch Austin Powers, at least the first one, it's like, oh, they knew James Bond. They made choices on purpose because they are clearly fans of James Bond. The second and third ones, not so much, but the first one, very much so.
I have since learned like a few random things here and there because I watched Austin Powers when I was a kid and I thought it was funny without knowing anything about James Bond. And like then I learned the one that always stands out is one of the henchmen being named Random Task.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh, Odd Job.
Yeah.
Like I get it.
I got that one purely because of the N64 game.
Yeah. And then like all of his, I don't know what you call them, cabinet. All of his like henchmen are based on, some of them are pretty old Bond villains. Like Frau Farbissina is supposed to be Rosa Klebb from Russia with Love. So like the second movie. Number 2 is Largo from Thunderball, whose number inspector was number 2. So.
Well, time for another Austin Powers rewatch. What are you going to do?
Nice.
You've done this to us all, Jim.
Good.
Yeah. Well, I had 2 movies I wanted to bring up.
Okay.
Cujo.
Oh, okay.
Big fix if she can call for help in the middle of it. Because it's not, the whole thing is that the dog can't get in. There is time. It's just, they can't move the car. The alternator went out. So, if a cop can come out and help, totally changes the plot. Kind of. There is no movie, essentially.
It's just called Animal Control.
Yeah. It was the most boring movie of all time. And then the other one, which is another real thing that happened, but they made a movie of, is 127 Hours, which is the movie about the hiker who gets stuck. And that happened, I believe it was in the early 2000s. So cell phones were around.
Yeah.
He apparently did not have one.
Mm.
He was also out in the wilderness, so a big part of the plot is that he was being kind of irresponsible.
He was being irresponsible, but he also, like, things that he did have for safety measures, like he had dropped or something. So, like, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, this is a real thing. So it's like, it's not like someone wrote this plot, but
Right.
yeah, if he had a cell phone and it had bars, or if he had a satellite cell phone, would have changed the plot significantly there, I would say.
Sure would. I bet the real guy would have liked to have had that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to imagine, yes.
That movie is another one that I didn't watch for a really long time because I was like, I mean, I was happy that the guy survived and he had like that whole inspirational book tour and stuff. But when the movie came out, I was like, I don't know if I want to watch a movie that's just a guy stuck between some rocks.
It's a thin premise by the sounds of it.
But I did finally watch it, and it is actually really well done, but I never ever want to watch it again specifically because of how much the climax of what he had to do affected me.
Ugh.
It is so shot so graphically.
They
and I'm like,
show
I
it all.
can't. They don't. It's not so much that they show it all, it's that like when I'll describe this, maybe content warning. When he is in the process of cutting off his hand, he has to get through the bone, and then he has to get through the nerve. And when he does that, the movie just like really heavily hits you with like this high-pitched ring, and just like you feel it. Like at least I did, and I'm like, I can never watch this again.
Fair.
Well, I guess sign of a great filmmaking process when your customers go, I will never watch this again.
Yeah, right.
Well, they already got my money.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Home Alone? Because
this was brought up a lot in the comments.
Yes.
And I do think it's thin because the phones being out is already addressed in the movie, right?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But you couldn't knock out a cell phone.
Well, there was a YouTube...
Well, I'm saying if Kevin had a cell phone is what I mean.
I think I saw this fairly recently, that there was a YouTube sketch or something that somebody made, and they were like, what if Kevin had a cell phone? And like the joke of the video, I'll have to see if I can find it. The joke of the video was like, he wakes up and he looks at his phone and he has a text from his mom, and she says, hey, we left without you, we're on our way back.
Mm-hmm.
Or something like that. Or he texts his mom and says, hey, you left me here, or something like that. And Brian is correct. They do address the phones being out. I feel like they absolutely could have, like maybe they packed his phone so he didn't have a phone or something like that.
Also, he is a little kid, so I will say, like, if it took place later, he wouldn't have a phone probably. I think most kids that age probably, I hope, don't. I guess probably they do, but
a lot more than you would think. And he's wealthy, so
I thought about it because I was like, I didn't have a phone when I was that age, but it's because I'm old, and I have to imagine current kids do.
Nobody had phones when I was that age because they hadn't perfected cell phone. Like,
I was also thinking, he could have called the cops, but I don't know if he would have. I think he had too much fun just messing with those guys.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, they fell into his trap. His sadistic trap.
Turns out he didn't need the police, so...
Yeah.
In
fact, he wouldn't want the police to find out what he did. That would have been bad.
I think Kevin maybe even had a phone and purposely didn't use it. So I have to assume.
He looks at the phone and he's like, nah.
Yeah.
I got this.
Another one I was thinking about was... I thought about this for a minute, and then I was like, I don't think this would have helped. But was Die Hard. And I don't think it would have helped because right away, John McClane is able to radio the police and they just ignore him. So like a cell phone wouldn't have changed that.
The only other person he could have called was like his wife or one of the other people held hostage, but like they would have been killed if they were sitting there talking on a cell phone. So
yeah, and I think Yeah, his wife definitely couldn't have talked on the phone because like Hans's whole things, they thought of everything. So if they were in a world with cell phones, he would have thought about cell phones, right?
Yeah, they just would have confiscated people's cell phones or something.
Yeah. Or I know they make like those localized jammers.
Yeah.
So maybe he would have had one of those. Because I know that for a while, I think movie theaters were testing them out, and that did not go over well with the audience.
Oh, to like stop people from being
basically
on the phone?
making the cell phone dead zones in like theaters. And, if there's an
Okay.
actual proper emergency, people wouldn't be able to get through. So
Yeah, that was insane of them to even try that.
Yeah. It's like, you can come watch this movie, but you have to wear a ball gag so that you can't talk during it. Like, you can't do that.
like, I get why they wanted to, but I also understand the multiple reasons why they shouldn't do that.
Yeah. I didn't know they had tried that.
Derek, what you described is a very specific kind of theater. It's a different thing. Don't.
Yeah, well, those, yeah. So they do
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
I was thinking about The Wizard of Oz also, which, very, very small thing, but it would have changed the plot dramatically if after Dorothy saw the vision, or I should say she didn't see it, but after the guy said that he saw a vision of Annie M collapsing, she could have called home and they could have been like, she's fine. Also, there's a tornado coming. Don't leave where you are. Shelter in place.
Yeah.
But of course, this took place in 1939, so whatever.
And also they would have just been able to call Oz and be like,
Well,
can you come give us a hot air balloon?
He would have said no, probably. Right?
Oh, yeah, probably.
He's a jerk.
yeah.
Actually, it's been so long now since I've seen the original Wizard of Oz that it's like it just exists in pop culture in my brain.
Yeah.
Because I've seen so many like hot takes on it, like Tin Man and Wicked recently.
I think it's like the most genre crossing adapted thing that I've ever heard of. There's sci-fi versions, there's more fantasy versions, there's horror versions.
Oh, yeah.
There's a Scrubs episode.
Oh, yeah.
I have brought Scrubs up in the past several episodes of recording this podcast. I don't know why.
We had already talked about medical dramas.
Yeah,
it's true.
It makes sense.
I
All
avoided
for
it.
Scrubs.
All right, listeners. There are tons of movies, so we didn't talk about all of them. But let us know this week, how would a ghost on an elevator be affected with a cell phone?
Oh.
If you have thoughts on that or anything else that we talked about this episode, you can share them with us by emailing feedback@vaguelyscientific.com, or you can comment on our blog, or you can like us on Facebook, or comment on YouTube, or you can now follow us on Blue Sky @vaguelyscientific. Hey, Jim, where do we get all these wacky questions?
We get them from you, the audience. And if you audience folks who are listening to this right now have a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, please email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and all the other cool places that podcasts like to hang out. And subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out, and so does telling your friends.
And tell them to send us their favorite movie and whether it uses cell phones or not.
Ooh, yeah. Our vaguely musical intro is composed by Anthony Pizzelli. And don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. We just very recently put up a new design that is about how mushrooms are fruit. They're not, but that's okay. You could get that on whatever you want and just proclaim that to people and see how angry they get.
I mean, they are a fruiting body.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Mushrooms.
Well, badger. Thank you to Brian for being our guest this week.
Snake!
For Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
I'm Brian.
Mata ohimade.
Toodaloo, everyone.
Bye.
That was the back to Mr. Roboto.
Oh, right. Yeah. I had to think about it for a minute. I was like, I'm pretty sure this is going to tie into the beginning, but I couldn't remember what the beginning was.
Any questions, concerns, comments, or other things starting with C from anyone?
Claptrap.
Nothing starting with C.
Okay. Well, I guess question starts with Q, but it shouldn't. It should start with K. We should get rid of Q. This is a different
We did
topic.
that episode already.
I know.
Well, when you're right, you're right. You gotta keep shouting it from
You
the.
gotta keep shouting. It hasn't happened yet, so I
Yeah.
still need to. Okay.